Hey everybody, welcome back. So to kick off our series on behavior and what's underneath it, we thought we would start by talking about the brain. It's my favorite subject.
It's her jam.
Yes, so the brain and development. This is something that's really become a lot more popular, I think, in recent decades as far as, sending out information to parents. I know the Alberta Health Services puts out these incredible videos on building better brains. So those are great. We will include those on our website for really quick resources if you want to look into it. But we think this is such a huge topic for parents because it can really increase your understanding of your child and where they're at. And when we have more understanding, we can have more compassion, more patience. We can have, expectations that actually are developmentally appropriate, that are fitting what our child is capable of, so we're not constantly setting them and us up for failure, right? This is kind of a core foundational piece. So to begin with, we're going to start by talking about Daniel Siegel's hand model of the brain. So
I love this.
Right? Yes. So this is also something you can look up online.
This is really hands-on.
Just hands. Okay. So you're going to hold up your hand. Yes, right? You can have it facing towards you. We're going to face it towards the camera so you can see. But this palm area, your palm and your wrist, this is what we would call the brain stem. So this is at the very base of your brain. It actually connects to your spinal cord, and this is our survival brain. You can almost think, some people refer to it as like your lizard brain, which is a little bizarre, but it's basically all your survival functions. So sleeping, eating, appetite, breathing, etc., etc. This is also your fight, flight, freeze responses, all down here. So this part of the brain is just wired to keep you alive. Okay? So that's our very base. And this part of the brain actually develops the fastest. So when a baby is born, this part of the brain has to be working essentially for them to survive in the world, right? To regulate their sleeping and their breathing and all those kinds of things. So the next part, if you tuck your thumb over, this little guy, he's kind of wrapped in the middle of the brain. So you can't really see it from the outside. This is called the limbic system. Okay? So the limbic system, I like to kind of think of it as like our mammal brain. So when you think about the difference between like a lizard and a dog, for example, well, lizards will eat their babies and dogs will be they can even attach to humans. So that's what this part of the brain does, this limbic system, is it's attachment, emotion, bonding. It also plays a really strong role in memory. So with these two together, again, they are the most developed when a child is born. Okay. If we fold these fingers over the top, this is called the cortex, or the outer layer of the brain. This is that gray, squishy stuff that we think of when we think of a brain that wraps around the outside, okay? So this part of the brain has a huge job of integrating all these informations, or information coming from different sources. So it has a visual center, and it has an auditory center, and a movement center. So it's constantly taking input from inside our bodies and outside the world to help us move and balance and do all those things. Yeah. But the very special part, my favorite part of the brain, is this prefrontal cortex that sits right at the front, and it's right behind your forehead. And this guy is the master conductor of the brain. This is essentially what makes us human. It gives us the ability to communicate. It has language. It has creativity. It has logic and reasoning and decision making and all of those capacities that we want and that essentially make us unique from other species. So those are the main three parts. Now the important thing to remember about kids, and I think this is where a lot of parents get a little caught up, is that the brain develops from the bottom up. Right? So essentially what that means is that for quite a number of years, it's like your child is driving around with a fully loaded vehicle, right? Like think of Ferrari. They've got the gas pedal and the brakes haven't been installed yet.
That sounds like kids.
Right? Especially teenagers. Yeah, right? But that's essentially, like if you think about it, these two bottom parts of the brain, your brain stem and this limbic system, they are kind of like the gas pedal of your brain.
Right.
They are the parts that go, danger, fear, react with emotion, like all these, really reactionary behaviors. That's all this downstairs stuff. And it's our upstairs brain that can put the brakes on.
Right. And this doesn't develop
until we're 25.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Can I say that again? 25. This part of the brain is not fully developed.
This is not hopeful.
Right? goes to show, really,
Huh.
how huge of a job parents have,
Yes.
right?
In helping develop this part.
Yes. So essentially, especially when your child is young, like you think about a toddler, what are you doing for your toddler? You're soothing them, you're calming them down, you're making choices for them, all these things. You're essentially being a prefrontal cortex for them.
So when we say things a gazillion times, that's developing this.
Yes.
So it's for a purpose.
It is.
Well, that's
right?
hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's essentially how it works, is that as that parent, you have to provide these functions to help your child start developing the capacity themselves. And naturally, as they get older, you're going to need to be less invasive, less controlling, like all those kinds of things, right? You know, a teenager doesn't necessarily need you to swaddle them and hold them. Well, they might, but right? But you can help them soothe themselves in other ways.
Right.
So that's the really cool thing to think about when it comes to brain development. And all these disorders and behaviors that we're going to talk about in the next few, I guess, weeks or lessons to come is really going to refer back to this, is thinking about where is your child's brain at? And what are our expectations of them? Right? So when we have this expectation that, you know, our 10-year-old should be able to figure out these social problems that they're having at school with this group and that group, maybe they actually can't. Maybe that brain isn't there yet.
Right.
And it can be really frustrating because with a lot of kids, you see this sort of uneven development too. And that's the other thing, is the brain, it doesn't all develop at the same rate. Some parts will develop faster than others. So you could have a kid who can solve these incredibly complex math problems, but can't, you know, has a meltdown when they have to try and decide which friend they can invite to the movie that night.
That is so important to know, because parents think if you can do that, then you should be able to do this. But thank you. So that's good for us to remember.
Yeah. Right. And you can just kind of be standing there sometimes going like, what is going on? Right. But it's just, you know, to be able to take that step back and remember that you're dealing with a developing brain. This is not a fully mature brain. So they're not going to be consistent. Sometimes they are going to be chaotic and unpredictable and frustrating and all those things. But they can also be incredibly creative and funny and joyful.
That's true.
Right? So it's really, it's honing in on those things. And a great resource that talks a lot more about brain and brain development in children is Mindsight by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. So we would highly recommend reading that book if this is something that you want to know more about and really have some ideas of specific ways you can develop different parts of the brain. It's a great resource to check out. But we would love to hear more from you. If you have questions, comments, hit us up, and we will see you guys next time.